Hey there, my friend. If you're watching this video, I want you to pay attention because in this video I'm going to teach you 5 secret keys to selling more stuff. Whether you're doing it on or off the internet, particularly right now because a lot of people are having a hard time because the recession. And so these are tricks that I've used in different businesses of mine to do a couple $100 million in sales. I've helped a lot of people learn to sell stuff. This isn't like an all-encompassing lecture on sales. This is going to be a pretty short video. This actually came from a Facebook broadcast. So I was on Facebook and for whatever reason my internet kept shutting out. We're in the middle of a quarantine right now, so I'm actually in a hostel in a place called Pereira, Colombia, and it's really different because literally everything is shut down. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. So we're actually going through a period of time right now where a lot of people are going through struggles, and I think it's really important if you're watching this video to be positive and optimistic about the future. The reason is, I was talking to my brother about this, who's a hypnotist, and I don't know if you've ever gone into a hypnotist and sat down in his chair and like before you're even having a conversation, you're already in a trance. But my brother, he sees hypnosis clients, and so he brings people into his office and sits down, and then they go into a trance, and then it's really important when somebody's in a deep trancey state that he has positive suggestions and that he's really careful with his words, because when somebody's in a deep state, it's really easy to do something like mess them up and not even know what you're doing. This is what the news is doing right now. A lot of people don't know, for example, that just being in fear makes people more susceptible to infectious diseases. It's actually proven through scientific studies. And so our entire society right now, they're in a giant fear box where the government is telling them they're not going to be okay, and then the news is telling them they're not going to be okay, and then their churches are telling them to stay inside, and then everybody's paranoid when they're outside, and so the mass paranoia is feeding into a hysteria, which is actually going to make people more sick. So I think it's important watching this video to stay in a positive state about what's happening in the future. And in that positive state, let me teach you how to make more money in the middle of a recession, once you like to do that. So I'm going to teach you 5 points. The 5 points are the power of stories. We're going to talk about the power of rapport. We're going to have the power of rapport. We're going to talk about the power of questions. We're going to talk about the power of pre-framing. And we're going to talk about the power of vision in that order. So the first one is, I'm going to rehash a story. I want to tell you a story about a car salesman. So there's this guy named Randy Gage. Some of you guys and gals may have heard of him. He's a famous network marketing trainer. He's somebody that I listened to a lot back in the day. I used to drive around listening to his audios because he really had a way of breaking things down and making them bite-sized, making them chunkable, and making them easy to understand, while also telling enough stories to kind of keep your attention, so you keep paying attention to his videos and keep paying attention to his audios. Pretty much no matter how long he talked, he was really good at that. And so he really had this way of telling stories. But anyways, he's telling this story one time about how he's buying a car. He just wanted to go buy like a really nice car. It was like a Corvette, or it was like a Ferrari, or something that cost like a couple $100,000. Anyways, he goes into the car lot. He's got the money ready to buy. And the car salesman comes up to him, and what he starts doing is he starts immediately pushing his message onto him. So what he does is he starts telling him what kind of rubber the tires are made out of, how many layers of paint the car has, right? He starts talking about how much horsepower it has and how fast it can accelerate from 0 to 60, which is actually something he was a little interested in. But after like 20 minutes of just listening to feature, Randy goes, "Stop. Let me ask you a question." The guy says, "Okay." He says, "I got 2 questions, and if the 2 questions, these answers are favorable, I'm actually just going to buy this car, but I got to be out of here in like 30 minutes. That's why I interrupted you. So I got 2 questions for you. You ready?" The guy says, "Yeah, I'm ready." And he says, "Okay, if I buy this car right now, will I look cool and will I go fast?" Again, let me repeat that for you. If I buy this right now, will I look cool and will I go fast? And the guy says, "Well, yes." And he says, "Oh, good, I'll take it." And anyway, so what he does is he pulls out his checkbook, writes a check for $200,000 cars. A very wealthy person, obviously. The guy's like flabbergasted. He's like, "I didn't have to talk about the paint. I didn't have to talk about," and he's like, "Just talk about what people want from now on." See, a lot of times somebody wants one thing and you're pitching them another, and because you're trying to sell them this other thing and they don't even want it, what happens is that they're focused on what it is that they want, and they just kind of tune you out, right? So this is just something to keep in mind. So that was a point that I illustrated to you by telling a story. right? I didn't tell a story about telling stories. I told a story to illustrate a point. One time I was listening to Les Brown, and this was actually at a private event with Vic Striz's house. Dave Sharp was there. This is in Hawaii. Back in the earlier days when I was running in Power Network, I remember Les Brown was talking, and he told something that was really significant after he told a story about it. And what he said was, every point should have a story, and every story should have a point. See, when you're trying to educate people on a subject and you just blah, blah, blah about technical details, what happens is that their brain doesn't even remember the details, because the brain has to kind of connect things together in a visual, emotional way to be able to even remember. And unless you're telling a story about the point that you want to get across, people don't even remember what you're talking about anyways. And so remember that every point should have a story, and that every story should have a point. If you illustrate a point, tell a story. All right? So I just told you a story about sales, and I also told you a story about something else. And what's that? It's about the power of questions. We're going to get to questions in a minute. Before I get that, I want to tell you about building a connection with people. So the first thing that you want to do if you have a lead coming in through you, or if you have somebody watching one of your videos, or if you have somebody connecting with you on Facebook, is you want to build a powerful rapport. A rapport is this magnetic connection that you have with somebody, where if you can imagine yourself at a time when you were getting lost in a conversation with somebody, or maybe you were seeing a really good movie and the movie created such a good connection to you that you just got lost, and then 2 hours later the people had like all these characters that evolved, and you'd have all these wars get fought and these battles, and you're sitting there and you're wrapped in the story and you haven't even realized that literally 2.5 hours has gone by. Or you're sitting there talking to your spouse and you're about ready to make love or whatever, and you're just totally lost in the conversation, and you totally forget about everything else going on in your environment. Rapport gives you the ability to have people completely tune out everything but the sound of your voice in their environment. And how do you create rapport? Well, stories is one way you can do it. What rapport actually is, though, is fascinating. Rapport is the process of mirroring and matching somebody's energy. They did this by studying people who are in good relationships already, and what they found that when two people are very connected, they match each other's energy, meaning that when one person moves, the other person moves. So when one person talks a little bit higher in their voice, the other person talks a little bit higher in their voice. When one person moves their hand, the other person moves their hand. That people literally match and copy each other's behaviors. And you notice this, like if you're in a friendship that you've had for a long time, that you'll start creating intonations. The words that you say will start being like your friend. You'll start making body gestures that are a lot like your friend. And this is just a natural human behavior that says, hey, I'm connected to you. And so there's a lot of ways of creating rapport, but the best way of doing it if you're in person is by paying attention to little things that the person is doing, and literally by copying their behavior, and not being too overbearing with it, but doing it in a way to where you're actually paying attention to their way of communicating, and you're trying to communicate in the way that they communicate. So if a person talks a little faster, you talk a little faster. If a person uses their hands at this part of their body, you kind of move at a similar rhythm. If a person talks slower, you want to talk a little bit slower, right? The process of mirroring and matching is what actually creates that mystical connection. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the power of questions. If you go back to the car salesman story I told a minute ago, what didn't the guy do when he walked in the car lot? He didn't ask him what he wanted. He didn't ask why he wanted it. He didn't ask what resources that he was willing to invest to get it. He just immediately got excited that somebody was there to buy a car and started blah, 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 blahing on them, right? And so I learned a long time ago that if you help enough people get what they want, that you're going to undoubtedly get what you want. And if you help enough people get what they want, you're going to undoubtedly get what you want. And so the way that you help people get what they want is you find out what they want first. And you can do that in a lot of ways. For example, if you've got an email list, send an email out with a survey. Ask some questions about what people want. You can actually buy survey responses too. There's research companies and research firms that go into a target market. They find out what people want for you, and you can actually buy that data, and when you find out what the people want, you can actually create responses to what it is that people want. And by responding all the time to what people want, people are always interested in what you have to say, and if people are interested in what you have to say, it's a lot easier to build connection, build rapport, and to sell your products and services to them. Does that make sense? And so you can do a survey. You can ask people on Facebook. You can call your customers and you can ask them, what was it that made you make a decision to buy this product? I want to make sure that we're serving our customers and that we give you actually what it is that you want. If you phrase it in that way, like, hey, I want to give you more of what you want. What is it that made you make a decision to buy this product? Then they're going to see that you care about them, and then you actually have a better chance of delivering and following through and making sure that they get exactly what it is that they wanted to get, and that's going to make you more money because they're going to keep coming back if they continue to get what it is that they want. So again, you find out what people want by what questions. There's a bunch of different kinds of questions that I got about 9 minutes left in this video to get through. So it's a lot of content in 9 minutes, right? There's a lot of different kinds of questions you can ask people, right? You can ask people questions that elicit a specific response, such as what's called a tag question in sales, okay? And tag questions are useful. Tag questions are like, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you say, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? If it's actually a beautiful day and then you just kind of observe it, this is what you do with a tag question is you observe something that's going on and then you say, isn't it? You know, it's a very beautiful painting back there, isn't it? Well, I mean, everybody's going to say yes, because it is, isn't it? Right? This video is a good, concise video on how to develop sales skills to sell more stuff, don't you think? Don't you think? That's going to say, somebody's going to say, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do think. It's going to say yes. It's very rare that you'll ever ask a tag question and get a response that isn't yes if you're just pointing out something that's happening and then you say, isn't it? Right? Right? It seems like you're really interested in this feature. And they'll say yes, right? Like if somebody walks up and you're selling, let's say, a car, for example, and they say, oh, this car is a beautiful color of red. It is a beautiful color of red, isn't it? Yes. I just said that, right? But the point is they're going to say yes. Now, if you overdo the yes questions, what happens is people will get irritated with you. So you can't overdo it, all right? There's a balance between getting a yes and actually asking a question where somebody can give you an answer. So in a question where somebody can give you an answer is an open-ended question, right? Like if you ask somebody, for example, what is it? What can I do for you? That's an open-ended question. Like, how can I help you? That's an open-ended question. It elicits a specific kind of response, but it's open-ended in its answer. In other words, it's not pinning them into a corner to elicit. And if you pin people into corners all the time, they don't like it, okay? So what you want to do is you want to get yeses from people. That's called a tag question. And then you want to ask them more open-ended detail to allow them to elaborate on what it is that they want. I could do a whole training on good question asking to sell more stuff and get people to pull out their credit card and make a decision to buy. I'm actually really excited about selling stuff right now. And the reason is I haven't really been excited for the last couple of years. And so I haven't really bothered. I went and I did like $200 million in sales. I did that because I wanted to. And then for a while, I just decided to take some time off. And now what I'm doing is I'm going back because I see the great opportunity in front of us from the coronavirus pandemic, because it's so easy right now for people like you and I to go and make a lot of money right now that we might as well, right? So in any case, you get people to say yes, and then what happens is that you ask them more detailed and more open-ended question, and I can do a specific training on how to get those questions moving in a more straight line to what it is that you want. You always want to be moving towards the outcome and discovering if this person's a fit or if they're not a fit, if you're actually asking questions. However, if you're doing a video, for example, a sales video, you can actually have those questions presented in the video and still move people through the process of asking questions, and they're just writing them down in their home, or they're just thinking through as you're asking. Like, for example, if you ask people, what are the 5 things that you would do having become if time and money were an issue for you? What's going to happen is people are going to begin answering that question, and that's more of an open-ended question, but it moves them in a certain direction to do what I would call dream building, so asking questions. The next point is, so we've gone over storytelling, we've gone over the power of rapport, we've gone over asking questions. The next thing is that I wanted to cover is the power of pre-framing. I can't emphasize this enough, and again, this is like a 3-hour training by itself, pre-framing. Pre-framing is the process of getting somebody to you who's qualified and who's interested in what it is that you do. So a lot of people, what they do is they try to sell their products and services, but there's no pre-framing to get the people to want to buy those products and services before it is that they show up. So I used to go and I used to do network marketing presentations. And when I first got involved in the home-based business industry, what I would do is I would go out and I would just pitch to people. So I would go and I would have something to present, and I would, in my desire to sell a product, just go start pitching people. But what I didn't do is I wouldn't get people to me in a sort of process that made it to where when they got to me and they're hearing the pitch, they already wanted to buy. And that's actually the key to having successful presentations. The key to having successful presentations, part of it is what you do when you show up. I got to admit that there's ways you can go in front of a totally cold audience and you can sell about anything to about anybody if you're good. That's true. You can do that. However, it's so difficult to do, and then you have to be pushy, you have to get massive rejection. There's going to be a bunch of people there, no matter what you do, that are not going to want to buy your product and service. It's actually much more intelligent to make it to where when people show up, they're already ready to buy. And how do you do that? It's a process of what's called pre-framing. So in network marketing, for example, I discovered that there's two options I had. For example, if I just took people straight to a meeting and I did the same presentation, I could probably get 30-40% of the room to buy if I was having a really good day. Right? In other words, if they were totally cold, if they thought they were going to one thing and they were showing up to another, and I got up and I did a presentation, most of the time, there was a pretty good percentage of the room that would get there and they would just pull out their credit cards and make a decision to buy, but it wasn't all of them, okay? It was really frustrating getting all the no's, and you had to build systems to turn no's into yeses. It was a very complicated process. And then I learned a strategy, and what I learned there's a pre-qualification process you can run people through. And what you would do is you would give them like an audio CD, or you would send them to a capture page, for example, on the internet, right? Send them to a capture page, collect their information, and then they go to a video, and then give them a call. They've already seen you, they've already heard your voice, they're already pre-qualified, and the chances of them making a decision, pull out their credit card, and now buy something is actually kind of high, right? So if you get them through that process, and by the time they get to you, they're already pre-qualified, then it's going to be much easier for you to get on the phone with them and get them to make the decision that you're looking to get them to make, because they want to make that decision already. So pre-qualification and pre-framing, this is the difference between having a 9 out of 10 closing rate and having a 1 out of 10 or a 5 out of 100 closing rate. It really is that big of a difference. No matter how good you are, if you're on the phone with leads that don't want to pull out their credit card, you're really not going to sell them, you're not going to get them to buy a lot of stuff, I'll put it that way. Okay? They're not going to buy everything from you and just instantly make decisions if they don't want it. However, if they want it and they already are like itching to buy it and they're like shaking practically so bad because they already want to pull out their credit card by the time they even see your sales video. In other words, by the time they even get to you, they're like, yes sir, how do I buy? If that's what you're creating with people, then what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot higher results, because then it's just like you ask the same questions, but you got this magical power because this person has been pre-framed and they're already looking up to you by the time they get there. So what I used to do is I'd send people through a blog post, maybe do a retargeting ad, maybe move them through a capture page, or maybe send them through a capture, and then they see a video, and then if they don't buy it already, I'm getting a 9 out of 10 or 95 out of 100 closing rate, because they've already had 3 to 5 exposures, and they've already heard my voice, and they already know who I am, and then I'm just showing up and closing the sale. It's the easiest thing in the world to get people to pull out their credit card and make a decision to buy now, if that person already wants to, right? The hard thing is trying to take a person who doesn't want to buy stuff like right now. Like, let's say a person doesn't want to buy anything right now, and you're trying to get them to buy something right now. That's actually a tough situation, right? But if you've got somebody who walks into a car lot, this should be the easiest thing in the world. They walk in the car lot, they got money to buy a car, they want to buy a car, they're coming up to talk to you. It seems like this is a marriage made in heaven, isn't it? I mean, the person is looking for what you've got. Right? But a lot of people, they don't know how to handle that, so this is where rapport and questions and things like this goes in. Does this make sense to you? So pre-framing, the process of getting people to you with the right energy, is really important. The last thing I want to cover is the power of vision. Vision is so important because without vision, people perish. The good book says that, right? Like if you don't have a vision to the future that encompasses, for example, all the people around you, you won't be able to keep those people around you. Eventually, they're going to fall away from you. So if you want to keep people around you, you got to have a vision where your vision actually fits them and fits the size of their vision. And where I'm going today, that's actually the benefit of it, is that my vision is actually so big for what I actually want to do that it just never ends. And so there's no vision that exists that does not fit. On the earth, there is nothing that exists that does not fit inside my vision. My vision is big enough to fit everybody. So that's the benefit of where I want to go. Vision also has to be chunked down into actionable steps. Vision is the power that you've got over somebody, where you say, this is where we're going to go. And their mind just shuts off and they just say, how much money do you need? And what do I got to do to be a part of this big vision? It's like if Bill Gates invited you to his house and he was saying, hey, come over to my house. I'm going to launch this company that's going to take over the world. Now, a lot of people, they would have laughed, but he had a vision that was big enough where those people that came into his house when he was starting Microsoft in his garage, they're all billionaires today. And that's actually where you're at right now watching this video with me, because I'm telling you something that I'm right about ready to come back. Not yet, give me maybe a week, 3 weeks, and we're going to start doing some stuff that's just going to shake things up, and I want you to pay attention, be there, and let's lock arms and fight the force of evil. Hope you